This show is brought to you by Dudley Stevens. Hi, I'm Lauren, co-founder of Dudley Stevens. My mom, sister, and I started the brand because we wanted clothing that felt as comfortable as fleece, but still looked polished enough for everyday life. Our pieces are sustainably made, incredibly soft, and designed to be worn on repeat. Visit Dudley-Stevens with a PH and use code PODCAST for 15% off your first order. Let's get started. Hi, I'm Lauren.
And I'm Khaki.
And we are sisters, business partners, and no surprise, best friends.
This is our podcast, Two Sisters in Business. We'll let you decide who's older.
We hope you'll join us while we talk about what it's like to work with your sister, be a mom, and run a family business.
So listen to us in the pickup line at school or while you're having your morning coffee.
We want you to be inspired to start that side hustle, escape the stresses of your day, and most importantly, laugh along the way.
Find us at Spotify, Apple, or wherever you find your podcasts.
And in case you're wondering, I'm the oldest. This is Two Sisters in Business. Let's dive in. All right, well, welcome to Two Sisters in Business. Khaki is unfortunately under the weather, so I'm going to be recording my first solo episode, which I was a little torn on, a little nervous. For some reason, I'm nervous about this. I don't know why. I feel like I just, it was like a last minute laryngitis sickness. So here we are. Anyway, missing Khaki today, but we have a lot of drops this week. We are kicking off, we're kind of headed now into all of our spring drops. So the drop this week is called Sporty Dudley. And we have Marion's restocking, if you remember that style from last spring and last fall, actually. We have Ingrid's dropping, our Ingrid pullover, which is our cream terry fleece. And it has a prism pink, like a light, bright pink collar and cuffs. And it's really preppy and super cute, which I predict that'll be the bestseller on March 3rd on the drop day. And then we have more Phoebe pullovers dropping, which have also done really well the past last spring, actually. So I'm predicting that the Ingrid will be the bestseller. But when we're back on with Khaki, we'll have to follow up on that and see which one actually was the bestseller. We had a great February. I can't believe it's March already. I'm kind of in denial about that. February has flown by, and I'm just ready for warm weather. I feel like we've had snow days upon snow days with our children at home, and by Tuesday night, after the 2 days in a row of snow days, I was just ready to get back to our regular schedule. We had to move all of our meetings around, which is funny as our kids are getting older. I've realized that when they were younger, it was easier to work from home. I don't know why, maybe because they take naps and there's just, you just kind of like camp out at home and don't do anything. But now when they're older, you have to like entertain them all day when they're home. So it just really doesn't help for trying to get work done and working from home when there's a snow day and they're not in school. So I'm happy they're back in school. And, we've had a few days of feeling a little bit more normal. But we're rolling right into March. What we're all, like our Dudley team, is most excited about for drops in March is celebrating St. Paddy's Day, kind of an unofficial celebration. We have a drop on a weekend in March that is our new jelly bean green, and it's in waffle. And we have two styles. We have our Putnam pullover, which is kind of like a boxier 3/4 zip pullover in the jelly bean green. And then we have our Ava dress, which we designed last year. It was Khaki's idea to make a golf dress that literally is the perfect golf green. And I was just thinking, like, in my dreams or like vision, that someone would buy this and actually wear it to the Masters while they're watching the Masters on the sidelines. It has pockets for your golf balls, your tees. You can wear, you could also wear it to play like pickleball in the summer or really any sport. It's super versatile, and I would also wear it as a cover up to the pool. So this dress does it all. It's very chic, very cool. And the jelly bean green is just a nice little twist on it. We also have it coming in white waffle later in the spring. So if jelly bean green isn't your favorite, the white is coming with navy tipping later in the spring. So look out for a St. Paddy's Day drop. And then we're rolling into more spring drops in March. We have April drops coming up where we're focusing on our Americana collection, which did really well last summer. So we're bringing that back. We're just doing a lot of different styles with like the red, white, and blue thing. we're also doing our boardwalk pullover with the American flag printed on the back, which was inspired by my mom. Our mom, Bonnie, had this Ralph Lauren jean jacket. I wonder if she still has it. And it's from like the 90s, and it had this giant American flag on the back. And so we did the American flag on the front last year, and I just wanted to mix it up for our customer who loves the Americana vibe and collection. So this year we're doing it on the back, and it's so cool. It's like vintage feeling, and it just has that like very nostalgic feel to it, much like the Ralph Lauren pieces do. And I'm really excited about it. So those will be coming in April. And then May and June, we have summer French terry and more summer fleece dropping. And I'm the lucky one who gets to take all of our samples to my spring break trip in March, which I'm really thankful for. So I'll be posting on Instagram and taking some content down on my spring break trip, but also trying to enjoy the vacation as well. So I'm really excited about my upcoming trip. I will be probably talking about it more on the podcast and recapping everything, but we're going with our best family friends down to a beach location, and I cannot wait, especially with the snow. It's like been top of mind right now, just getting in the warm weather. So on today's episode, Kaki and I had plans for another topic that will shelve and wait when she's feeling better. But I decided to pull out some questions that we've been gathering and do kind of like a rapid fire Q&A from followers and listeners that have submitted questions, and see where we go and see what kind of answers I can come up with. And I really didn't have time to like research or think about this because this was a last minute shift. So these really are off the cuff answers solo. But before we dive into that, I wanted to discuss quickly. So the show Love Story has come out with the Carolyn Bessette JFK Jr. story by the director Ryan Murphy. And I have not watched it yet. I have been told by multiple friends and colleagues that I need to watch it. And I plan to do that this weekend. I haven't had much time to watch it since it has come out. But I'm sure once I watch it, I'm going to binge watch it. And that's what a lot of my friends have said that they've been doing too. But what it's bringing up is all of these memories of when I worked at Calvin Klein back in, this was 2006 and 7, 2005, 6, 7, and then 2009 through 2013. And, this was well after Carolyn Bessette was there. But what's caused this whole, what's been so fun about this show coming out is that on Instagram, and my former colleagues and friends that I worked with have posted all these memories of that time of when we worked there. And it's kind of, and I've talked to friends about it too. And what's fun to reminisce and think about is that, we were there well after even Mr. Klein himself had left the business. He sold the business in 2003. So he had left, but what he left was this legacy, and he left an in-house company on West 39th in the Fashion District that he kind of left in place, even though other companies were producing and manufacturing the clothing and the underwear and Calvin Klein jeans, Calvin Klein underwear. He left in place this in-house machine that basically was responsible for Calvin Klein branding, advertising, public relations, design, that really was kind of put in place to maintain this Calvin Klein aesthetic. And the term like "that's so Calvin" was something we said all the time in the office. And so because of that, when I was working there, the setup was probably much different than when in the 90s when Carolyn Bessette was there. But we were able to work still in the same building. I spent a lot of time up on Madison Avenue in the Calvin Klein collection store. I actually had her same job, similar type role, working with celebrities and VIPs and dressing them for all these award shows and fashion shows when New York Fashion Week was going on. And I had the benefit of experiencing working for this major American luxury fashion house during a heyday of sorts, because it was before social media, before Instagram. And we were very much behind the scenes. And what I'm working on now is a Substack, kind of rehashing and remembering all of these memories and that time of my life. And I have very little pictures from it. I feel like I had an iPhone and I had a BlackBerry and then an iPhone during this time. And we just weren't taking many pictures, which I'm kind of thankful for too, because it was a wild time of life. And we were not out. I was not out like in front of the camera much. Like I was a junior level PR manager, working for my bosses at the time who were amazing. And I learned so much from. And we all, there were young gentlemen and ladies that I worked with who I still am in touch with, and some are very close friends still. And it was just a really exhilarating, fulfilling time. And I so value those years. I mean, I look back and I think I really found myself working at that company. And so it's really surreal to see that, this Carolyn Bessette story is now so front and center in the public facing world. And, she always was this icon, and this, even back before her tragic ending and her passing, she was just she just really was the moment in the 90s. And what's so amazing and incredible about her legacy is how, almost 30 years that she's passed. 2029 will be 30 years since the plane crashed and they both passed away. And she's still so top of mind and so top of the cultural, conversations that are going on right now. And I found that when I was working there too. I mean, I think her name was mentioned, and, she really just kind of set this tone for the PR ladies that we all kind of followed. And, I was not the only blonde, woman working in the PR department there. There were many that held my job. And I was just fortunate to have that job during those years that I was there. So I have so many stories from that time. I wish that I could write, a memoir, some sort of book about it, but I don't know if that will ever happen. So I'm going to write this Substack. I've pulled as many photos, that are decent and shareable to add into this post. And what's, very nostalgic, even as I'm writing this Substack about it, is I also met my husband during this time, while I was doing all this. So it was my own version of a love story, which is the title of the show. And so I can't wait to share this Substack. When this episode goes live, I may have shared it already. So if you follow me or my Substack, go check it out. I'm planning to just like further deep dive on it and try to share some other memories and experiences from that time of my life. So I just feel really lucky to have worked there, especially with this show coming out. It's just like really cool to have this like, kind of close knit memory of what it was like working at Calvin. And it's the coolest company, what he built. I mean, he also was an entrepreneur back in the 70s, late 60s, I even think, when he started and really revolutionized menswear and then eventually women's wear. And, he and Ralph Lauren kind of were these budding fashion entrepreneurs and designers at the time. And, they set these standards that we all look to as fashion, designers and entrepreneurs and working in the retail industry. They were really just like these icons and ultimate, these figureheads that we all look to and think about when we're, every day. I feel like you think about all these people that really revolutionize and pave the way for us to do what we do. So anyway, check out my Substack. I wanted to just kind of touch on that and discuss it a little bit because it was such an incredible time. And I'm now like getting back in touch with friends from 15 years ago that I worked with that I haven't even talked to in a while, who I like just adore and love. And it's really been a fun opportunity to kind of relive all of it. So anyway, check out my Substack. I will move on now to rapid fire founder Q&A solo version, which maybe I'll make the title of this episode. Okay, so the first question, how did you start Dudley Stevens? We have talked about this a ton on the podcast. And if you're a new listener today, I highly recommend going back to some of the earlier episodes. But essentially, I was working in this fast-paced fashion PR world. I actually had left Calvin when I got married and went to work in the beauty industry. And I loved working in the beauty industry. It was an entirely different customer, culture, women that I was working with. It was like just a different vibe. And the women that work in the beauty industry, they're so passionate about product and makeup and skincare. And I am too, but on a much different level they are. And I actually learned a lot about my skincare routine and like makeup, like how to do makeup during that time. And it's really helped actually like long term now and just in my current life. And I've written some Substacks too on like my makeup routine and my skincare routine and just like the learnings I've had from that time in my life when I was working at L'Oreal for 2 years. But when I was there, I really missed the fashion industry, and I had just gotten married and I was trying to get pregnant, and I really wanted to like settle down and really start a family. And my sister, Kaki, was also starting her family. And so we thought that, and we wanted to start a family business, I think. And that really was kind of the impetus behind everything. So it was, what is the family business? What are we going to launch? I have this fashion background experience. Kaki has lots of marketing experience. Our mom, Bonnie, is our fashion icon and just had all these wonderful design ideas. And so we kind of came together, the three of us, and decided that it would be stylish fleece clothing. We thought there was a major gap in the market for things that were cool, versatile, and just, very fashionable, and that could really run the distance of the day. And it, looking back on it, we were very lucky in that what we were designing also was something that we wanted to wear every day. And, that can happen, but it also, you can also create products that you don't wear every day. And we were really fortunate that, like, I'm wearing our best-selling style right now, which is our green point turtleneck. And this funnel neck turtleneck just really took off with women. And it was one of our first styles we launched in 2015. And that was really the idea behind it and why and how we did it. And we found a factory locally, we sourced fabric, and we just hit the ground running, and we built a site, and we used Instagram through and through to start the company in 2015. Okay, so the next question is the biggest risk that I've taken. I would say pitching to my dad to be our angel investor. When you're starting something and you're investing money, you take on risk, right? And it's scary. It's exciting. It's, it's really thrilling when you have this spark of an idea and to see it come to fruition and to, raise money in the beginning or however it is that you're going to pay for the company at first, because every company, no matter what, needs some sort of small angel investment at the beginning. And when you start a retail company, you obviously have to invest in inventory. So, that first investment and buying inventory for sure was the biggest risk that I had taken in my life at that point. Leading up to that, I had always had like a secure corporate job at Calvin Klein, at Gucci, at Lancôme, which was owned by L'Oreal, like I mentioned before. And so, going out on my own and taking that risk it's so funny because looking back on it, I don't think I was ever that scared. I should have been probably more scared. I just was convinced that we had this great idea and that, between my mom and my sister and I, we had the support and the resources. Claudia's cheering me on from the sidelines, which is very nice, our producer. But, it was, I think that's also like part of the entrepreneurial journey is that like ignorance is bliss sometimes. And what you don't know can really help you because it encourages you to just take the leap and take the risk. So that was definitely the biggest risk I think I've ever taken in my life. Okay, next question. What was your hardest year? So I would definitely say the COVID years of 2020 into 2021, which is obviously a very obvious, it's an obvious answer to give, but it was the most challenging year of our life in business. We had to pivot. We had to find a new supply chain. We had to basically move inventory and fabric and on top of having to find a new supply chain, the global supply chain was just paused because of COVID. So we did everything we could to the best that we could. And the decisions that we made, looking back on it, I don't know if I would have done anything differently. I feel like we just did what we could with the information that we had and our gut feeling. I think we'd made a lot of decisions with our gut during that time. And, it was definitely challenging. There were sleepless nights. There was stress. There was, we had payroll to meet. We had many employees at this time and rent on our office space and showroom. And so there was just a lot of pressure on our shoulders of still making income and revenue while also dealing with all these challenges. So that was for sure the hardest year. And I pray that we never have another global pandemic in my lifetime. I don't know if I can, if that will be the case, but it was just very, very challenging. Okay. The best decision, that is the next question. What is the best decision that I've made? I would say in business, the best decision would have been having my mom and sister on board. I definitely led the charge with Dudley Stevens in the beginning. I was leaving my job in the corporate world to take some time off for personal reasons. And so I had more time on my hand. And, I took time off to rest and kind of decompress. And then a week later told my husband I was launching a fleece company. And I think he thought I was crazy, but because he's a super supportive husband and just wanted me to be happy and he could clearly tell I was excited and happy about this idea. But I could have never done this on my own. And so the best decision was having my mom and sister supporting me and then working with me in the beginning. We had some of our most fun years in the beginning together. We spent time together. We were in the car all the time together. We, had meetings together constantly. We would get together for lunch because we didn't have an office and have a working lunch together. And what, more special time than spending that time with your mom and your sister. And, Kaki then had her first baby and would bring him in tow. And so we just had some wonderful years in those beginning years. And I cannot believe in how lucky I feel looking back on them and how fondly I feel about those early times. And, we learned a lot together. And I just would really, really recommend if you're starting a company to always think about having a business partner, someone that you really trust. And, it has brought nothing but, joy and just from a personal perspective, but also then from a business perspective, I am not equipped to do all the things that Kaki does. And so because of that, we come together and we really balance each other out. And, on days like today, we fill in where we need to when one of us can't be there. And it's just so nice to have that as a fallback in case, we can't be there for one day or another. So that would definitely be my best decision. Okay, next question. Was there a moment early on with Dudley Stevens when you genuinely questioned whether the business would work, and what helped you to push through that? Yes, there were many moments when I thought this is so silly or this is not going to work. And what was funny looking back on the beginning in the early days, we were so scrappy and starting out, and we were using a factory that was well experienced and very good, but we weren't I was hand making our hang tags at home. That's how scrappy we were. And I was pregnant and piecing together ribbon on a hang tag and then putting a safety pin on it and then dropping that off at our factory so they could attach it to the garment. And I just remember thinking at those times, really doubting myself, wow, how are we ever going to do this if this is how we're producing our clothing? I think I really questioned my ability and capability of finding a production that would actually make fleece clothing like we wanted it to. And not even just make the fleece clothing, but we just pieced together things in such a weird, scrappy way in the beginning. And it worked and the product was great, but it just wasn't, the operations were questionable at best. And I think that was things that we knew we had to work on and improve on as we were growing, and also improve on as we, not even, growth, but just to improve on to try to grow in the beginning. And then I would say other times I questioned, I think also what's hard is you look at other brands and you see what they're doing and you feel very envious and doubtful. And you're like, how can we do that? Or how are we ever going to be able to keep up with that? And that would sometimes cause me to pause and wonder if we were ever going to really succeed. And then I would say, when we have difficult like in the beginning, you have customer service, and we were overwhelmed by that as we were growing and trying to find new customers. We really, there were times where we couldn't make ends meet in the very beginning. And I'll never forget, there was a time, because summers are always difficult for us with cash flow. And as a seasonal fleece business, our main seasons, our main, times are fall and winter. And so summer, we've always kind of we always have like a panic in the summer. Even now, 11 years in, we're like, wait, how are we going to get through the summer? What's happening? And I always feel this, like, I brace myself, and I'm like, I have to get ready for this time, and I have to be mentally ready, and I have to get through it in a positive mindset and know we're going to work it out. And like, I even talked to my dad recently, and it came up again, and he was like, well, you'll figure it out. You always do. And I was like, oh my God, like that, he's right. But like, it's hard to hear that, because you're like, but how are we going to figure it out? How? But I'll never forget, we had one customer like back in the 2015, 16, where she would come and spend $1,000 at a time on the site. And she made one order one year, and I want to say it was $1,000. And that big, but small-ish money got us through like the month of July. And I'll never forget it. Khaki will know what I'm talking about. And the order came in, and we were like, oh, okay, we can make it through the next 3 weeks. Like, that's great. And so, but right before that, I really didn't think that we were staying in business in those first 1 to 2 years. So, it's always those like little savior moments where an order will come in, or a customer will show up, or a wholesale order would come in, or we do custom too. Like, all of a sudden you're like saved by that one little revenue stream. And then you get that extra motivation. And so there were so many times where we thought, oh, this is it, we're out. But then something happens where it shifts. So I guess the challenge is just like keeping that positive mindset to get to that next little saving moment, and knowing that it's going to come if you put in the work and you continually update and work on your operations. And I think that's what we were always focused on, is how can we make production easier, better? Where can we do that? How can we find someone to help us with this in an inexpensive way, to like streamline our day-to-day so that we can go out and I can do more Instagram posts, advertising, marketing. And because when you own a business, and Gary Vee, who I follow and love, has said this a lot, like if you're a founder and you're not out there like doing podcasts like I'm doing and speaking to your business and promoting your business, like you that's what you need to be doing as a founder. And granted, you have to do a lot of other things too, but you need to sell yourself, and you need to be out there, and you need to be marketing and meeting people and getting new clients and new customers. And so, I think those little saving moments back in the early days, like we wouldn't have found that customer if we weren't on Instagram or posting things or whatever. And she saved us that month. So I don't know. I think those times where you really doubt yourself, like you have to get into like proactive mode versus reactive. And I think those times I learned that. And whether or not I'm doing that perfectly every day, I don't know now, but I'm focused on getting new customers as much as I can, and doing things like this and creating content and being out front and center is the best way to do that. So that was a long-winded answer on that one, but I hope that answers the question. Last question. What would you do differently? Which I actually didn't prepare for this one at all. I'm sure if I sat and like made a list, and which maybe I could do a Substack post on that now that I'm thinking, like, and really do a deep dive on like anything I would have done differently in building our business. But I would say, looking back on, we had explosive growth both leading up to and then during COVID. So, we were tripling sales every year, and it was wild. I mean, I cannot believe that happened. It took us all by surprise. We set out to create this company, but we didn't see triple, year over year growth for many years in a row. And I wish that I would have taken a minute during this time to really evaluate our core principles and our North Star. And our North Star has always been, we're a family-founded, female-founded company first, that makes stylish fleece clothing out of recycled materials. We've almost always held true to that. But what I really want to focus on is the family founded part of all of that, because we've talked about this before in the podcast, but because that is our North Star, that family founded mentality really trickles into every area of the business. And it to the point where like who we hire, who we work with, we want them to have those values too. And it's, you say like family values, and it's not even like family, like a family unit. It's almost like family as in the company, and what are those values that we all live by. And that really just like trickles into every agency we work with, every person we hire. And I think that I jumped the gun on staying focused on that during the years of explosive growth, because your company takes off and my head was in the clouds. Like I think it did go to my head. I feel like at certain points I was like thinking we were this bigger than we were, and we had this like trajectory, and we were meeting with interesting people and networking, and we did not raise money, which we talked about on our last episode a lot. But we thought about it, and we really like we set out to kind of be this bigger thing than we really inherently were and wanted to be. And so I wish that I would have taken a beat during those years and really evaluated and thought through what I want from the company from a personal perspective. And I think I would have not hired as much. I would not have grown as much. I would have had a more tempered growth plan put in place, which is eventually what happened. We eventually got there, and the team downsized naturally, and the growth steadied out to a more manageable thing for the family-founded entity that we want. But I think I wish I would have appreciated that a little more back in those times and really taken a moment. So that's one thing I would have done differently. But otherwise, all those times were learning. We learned so much during that time, and I really value those lessons. And they've stuck with me through today. And I love that notion of failure right now with raising two young children. And I've met with my alma mater, Duke University, this woman who I've connected with recently. She runs an entrepreneurship, the entrepreneurship department at Duke. And then I also just recently went to a local high school in town to speak with seniors there. And two things that came up in the meeting and then the presentation I gave to the seniors, and it was learning how to fail. And I don't think that that when I was growing up, or in my life, that was taught and really appreciated enough. I feel like I was always taught, and this isn't even from my parents, like this was just in general and at school, and like women and feminism and all that, like basically told like you can do anything. But I think that the new messaging that I want to instill in my children is you can fail at anything. And that really is encouraging, because it's like, okay, you're not going to succeed at all this stuff. And like now my kids are also in sports, and there's a lot of emotions with all these sports, and they're failing more than they're succeeding, right? Like they're young, they're losing a lot. Like the amount of games that I've gone to and seen them, lose and cry and be upset. And we're just at the beginning of all this with all the sports and everything. And so it's really reminding me that we all need to learn how to fail, and it's okay to fail, and it's good to fail. And like, if you failed and you let someone down, or you weren't as good as you thought you could be, that is just something that you take into the next day and the next lesson. And so I really, as much as I say I would have done all that differently, like maybe I wouldn't have, because then the company wouldn't be what it is now, and I wouldn't have learned all of that, So it's hard to say. It's a really hard question to answer, because I really do want to focus on and try to remind, listeners, anybody, because it's just such a great life lesson. And there's so many times that I've failed in my life, and I value that now. I've learned to really value it and look back on it with pride almost, and just to kind of be thankful that I was even able to experience those things and go through all of that. So anyway, so that's the last question on my rapid fire solo episode. I might ask Khaki to do a solo episode while I'm on my spring break trip. She will be here, and see if she's up for that. But I Make sure to shop our drop, our sporty Dudley drop, and look out for the rest of our drops throughout March. And check out my Substack that I will be posting soon on my life at Calvin, and my experience in that whole world, and just kind of really appreciating and understanding, what the 90s and this minimalist fashion Carolyn Bessette moment that we're having, just my little experience with it. And thank you for listening in. I hope this episode was informative and fun to listen to. And I'll take Kaki's line, please like and subscribe all of our episodes, and subscribe to our podcast. We love doing this podcast. I'm a broken record in saying that. It's been really fun. And we really appreciate all of you. So thanks.